Hi, good morning everyone. Let us start with day 39 of our regular SAP FICO session. The topic that we'll be covering today is the costing variant. So, under the costing variant, we have different subcomponents, which are the costing type, date control, quantity structure control, transfer control, valuation variant, which all comprises to form the costing variant. Now, let us try to understand what is the meaning of costing variant. Costing variant is a set of a rule according to which it costs the finished goods or the material that we cost. Now, if it is a rule, then we can set up a different rule according for different plants in which the manufacturing activity takes place. Now let's look into the system practically, all those components, and then we will see how those components are grouped together to form the costing variant. Let's go into the system, going into SPR menu, SAP reference IMG. Within controlling, we have the product cost controlling, product cost planning, and here you have material cost estimate with quantity structure. So you have the different components that you can see over here that we also saw on the Excel file, that are the costing type, valuation variant, date control, quantity structure control, and the last one is defined transfer control. Now all those five elements combine together to form a costing variant, which is this particular node. Now let us try to have a look at each of them. But before looking into each of them, I say that the costing type and the date control have the setting at the client level. They are not plant dependent setting. Similarly, the transfer control is also the client level setting. You cannot set it differently for different plants. But the quantity structure control and the valuation variant are the two subcomponents within the costing variant which are configurable at the plant level. Now, let us start by looking each of them. We'll start with the costing type. In the costing type, the default that we will use for standard costing is 01. The costing type says once the costing for a material is released, the price that is calculated for the material should go and update the standard price in the material master or in the legal valuation. Okay, so the 01 costing type, which is a client level setting, indicates when the costing for the material is released, the cost that is calculated gets updated as standard price for the legal valuation in the material master. Going to the next subcomponent within the costing variant is the date control, wherein PC01 is the standard which we'll be using. You see, this is also not the configuration at the plant level, but it is a configuration at the client level as a whole, wherein we say that the costing date or the costing that we do is valid from the current date, and it remains valid for the maximum value, that is for the year 9999. The quantity structure date I have chosen as costing date from, that is the current date itself, and the valuation date also I have taken as the costing date from, which is the current date. The meaning of the quantity structure date is the BOM, means the raw material combination that are required to produce the finished goods, and the routing, that are nothing but the operations that are required to produce the finished goods or the material in consideration will be considered for the one that is valid on this particular date and going forward. Similarly, the value for the raw materials or for the operations will be taken into consideration if it is valid as on costing date from date. So the quantity structure date specifies the valid BOM and routing, and the valuation date specifies the valid price that has to be taken into consideration to cost the material. And the costing date from and costing date to indicates the validity of the costing that we are doing. Let's go back and see the another subcomponent, which is the quantity structure control. So again, the default that we'll be using is PC01, and you see here you have the quantity structure control plant. That means this particular configuration can be set at the plant level and which can be different for different plants, unlike the other two configurations that we have seen earlier, which are the costing type and the date control. This quantity structure determination, let's see here. This is a standard quantity structure which we do not configure. This is in standard given by SAP, which we simply assign to our plant, which I have done over here. Let's go back. The next is the transfer control. The transfer control that we'll be using is the complete transfer. Let's click on this, and you see you do not have the plant setting over here. That means the transfer control is also at the client level setting. You cannot set it differently for different plans. The meaning of the transfer control you can very well see in the documentation, wherein I have set the strategy sequence as the first. The system should go and check for the standard cost estimate, and it should check the valid standard cost estimate within last 1 year. And if it's not able to find the standard cost estimate, it has to go back and check for the future standard cost estimate. And if it is not able to find the future standard cost as well, then go back and check the previous standard cost estimate. Now let's check the configuration help, which has much more detail about the use of the transfer control. Let's configure this also to have the standard cost, current standard cost as sequence 1, future as in the sequence 2, and previous standard cost in sequence 3 within the started sequence. And for the current standard cost, it has to check the standard cost that is valid within a year. Let's save this and let's go into the documentation. Here we have the meaning and the use that the transfer control serves. Let us see some of those. For the rest, you may be able to read on your own. As the definition given here is a very simple. Let's check. You define a strategy for the parcel costing. The purpose of the parcel costing is to prevent the system from creating a new cost estimate of a material which already has a cost data. So let's say you have already costed a material, the raw material, and this raw material is used in costing the semi-finished goods and the finished goods. So with this configuration, you specify that when I'm costing the semi-finished goods or the finished goods, I should not cost the raw material again. The benefit of this is it improves the system performance because the raw material has been costed earlier, right? So that should not be costed again. And its standard cost, current standard cost, as for the setting that we did just now in priority 1, should be considered for calculating the cost of the semi-finished goods or the finished goods. Let's look at new definitions. So here are other uses of this particular configuration. You want to cost a new material. The BOM for this product contains the materials that have already been costed. This is what I explained. BOM means the combination of the raw materials. So it says the BOM has already been costed. So again, those materials contained in the BOM should not be costed. Coming to next, you want to cost all the new products in during the fiscal year. Then you are running the costing run for all the materials together. So transfer control ensures only the new products are costed which has or which had not been costed in the earlier runs during the current fiscal year. Coming to next, you want to plan the cost for the sales order in the product costing. So this is the MTO scenario which we'll discuss when we discuss the make to order scenario. But this is the high level understanding from the transfer control when it says what has to be costed when we cost the material and which price in the strategy sequence should be considered as priority 1, priority 2 or priority 3. There are other things as well like when the manufacturing takes place in plant A and the sale takes place from plant B, then we use the special procurement key to transfer the cost from plant A to plant B along with its cost component. So when we are making the transfer, again we need the status sequence. Which price from the sending plant should be considered and loaded onto the material in plant B, that is the receiving plant. So that is what is defined over here in the transfer control. Let's look to the next subcomponent within the costing variant, which is the valuation variant. The valuation variant is the most important configuration or most important component of the costing variant. So the default that we use is 001, and you see here we have the valuation variant for the plant. That means this configuration is at the plant level. So for our plant RCID, I have configured that the raw material that is contained in the BOM, when we are going to cost the finished goods, what price has to be taken for the raw materials. So sequence 1 that I have given is the price according to the price control in the material master. So if the price control in the material master is this S, that is the standard price, it should consider standard price. If it is V, then it should consider the average price, moving average price. If it is not able to find the price according to the price control that is set in the material master, then it should consider the standard price in the next sequence. If the standard price is also not available, then the system should go and check for the moving average price. Similarly, it should look for the planned price in the fourth sequence, and then it has to look for the purchasing info record price in the fifth sequence. And if at all it has not been able to find the prices from the sequence 1 to 4 and it has jumped to sequence 5, then again we have further settings to consider from the purchase info record whether it has to be considered the net quotation price or the gross quotation price. Now, so this is all about the sequence that we set for the material. Similarly, we have to also set for the activities. So activity planning we do every month or depending upon the periodicity that we set for the client. So if we do the planning every month, then I have chosen The planned price for the period should be taken as the first sequence while costing to consider the cost for the activities of the operations. If the price for that period doesn't exist, then it should consider the price as the average price for all the fiscal years. The next sequence that I have given is planned price as average of the remaining periods of the fiscal year. So this is the sequence that I've set for the operations cost. Similarly, going into the overhead, subcontracting, external processing we'll discuss later. Let me go into the overhead. For the overhead, as you remember, we already have designed the costing sheet. So that costing sheet I have assigned over here, and I have told that the overhead that is calculated by the costing sheet is also applicable on the subcontracted material. So this is the setting we do in the material master. Let's close this and go back to the costing variant to combine all those sub elements. PPC1 is the one that you'll be using, and you see here we have the costing type, which you have set as 01, valuation variant is 001, date control as PC01, quantity structure control as PC01, and transfer control as PC02. And here we have the additive cost. As of now, I have made the additive cost as active, and I have selected this to include the additive cost with stock transfers. The additive cost is applicable when we make a transfer from one company code to another, unlike the transfer price, which is applicable when we transfer from one plant to another plant within a company code. So the difference between the transfer price and additive cost is used in cross company code stock transfers, and the transfer price is used in the within or intra company within different plants transfer. And here we activate the cost component split, and we activate the cross company costing. So let's go here. We see for our company RCII with the costing type 01 and valuation variant 01, the cost component split is activated. Similarly, for the cross company costing, you see for RCIG controlling area, we have activated the cross company code costing. And here we have the cost component structure that we have already assigned to our company code, costing variant, and to the plant, right? So the costing variant works together with the cost component structure that we have already designed. Let's make this setting for the version. Costing version is 0, costing type is 01, valuation variant is 001, and let us save it. So we have made the valuation variant 001 applicable to the costing version. Let's go back. So this is all the configuration that you had to do from the costing variant perspective, which work along with the cost component structure that you have set in the previous days. With this, I am closing for the day. I hope you have a fair understanding of all those sub-cost components within the costing variant. This concludes day 39 of designing the costing variant. We'll meet again tomorrow. Thank you.